We're live here on Back It Up. I guess we're not technically live, but we're recording. We got a special guest in Coach Kirwan, assistant coach down at Virginia. Coach, how you feeling over there, down there, wherever you are?
Doing great here in Charlottesville. It's things are pretty quiet and slow here, but slowly starting to open back up, which I guess is exciting.
Yeah, we're excited too. Starting to migrate outside and see some lacrosse being played, which is cool, and hopefully that lasts. So hey, let's maybe start just by sharing a little bit of your lacrosse journey, your background as a player, where you grew up, and how you kind of fell into coaching college lacrosse.
Yeah, so I think it starts really early. This is something that I've known I wanted to get into coaching for a while, probably like 5th, 6th grade. Growing up, though, I really wanted to teach and coach in high school. That was kind of really all I knew growing up in Mountain Lakes, New Jersey. I like to compare that town to like a Texas football town. It's, everyone eats, sleeps, and breathes, Mountain Lakes lacrosse. So to me, that's like all I knew. Like I didn't really root for a college team. Kind of like thinking back to it, it's kind of weird. How it just was, high school lacrosse to me was it. And thankfully was able to see some pretty tremendous lacrosse growing up, especially between, Mountain Lakes and Del Barton. At that point was, some of the best lacrosse games I've ever seen. But so, that was kind of the goal. And so knowing that, I was going to play in college and, got recruited to play at Tufts. I'd been introduced to the NESCAC through my brother who swam at Williams. So it's definitely a conference that I align myself with from early on. And then, just so happened that about halfway through my junior year, Coach Daly approached me and asked kind of what my plans were post-college and offered me a spot to be a graduate assistant. Him knowing that I wanted to get into coaching and wanted to get potentially a degree in education because, again, my goal was to teach and coach in high school. And then a little I know that just opened up a whole new door for me, this idea of coaching in college and turning it into a full-time profession and kind of leaving the teaching by the wayside in the classroom, but obviously on the field. To be able to do that all of a sudden was really intriguing to me. So, like I said, I kind of knew ahead of time you have to kind of process how I was going to coach my buddies. So I'm going right from college to a graduate assistant where 3/4 of the team are guys that I was spending a lot of my time off the field with. And so had a year to, somewhat remove myself, maybe not be the last guy out at nights. And so that was helpful to kind of have that insight. And that definitely helped going into it. And I give a lot of credit to my teammates then and the guys that I coached when I became their coach. They handled it better than I could ever imagine. From day one, it went from Sean to Coach K. And, I really feel like that has helped the other Tufts GAs, as they talk about it. Danny Murphy's in it right now as a guy that went right from playing to coaching at Tufts. And, he and I actually were just talking yesterday on the phone and kind of saying the same things of how important it is for the guys to understand that there is, a line, whether you wanted it to happen or not. But I mean, like some of my best friends were guys that I coached. Like I coached Matt Callahan for a year, which is kind of wild to think about. And he's one of my best friends. So then it just, from one thing led to another. As these guys know, coaching in Division III, spend all of your summer working camps and just grinding it out between 3 weeks. I like to call it summering in Smithfield, Rhode Island at the Blue Chip 225 camp, doing those 3 weeks and just some other camps. I actually ended up working the Brown camp every single time there was one. And that's how I met Coach Tiffany and Kip. And from there, when that job opened up, when Steve Boyle left for Drexel, it was an opportunity where I got to know these guys through their camps. And so it made that transition a lot easier and things just really clicked from the get-go. And then next thing you know, we're down here, after, 2 awesome years at Brown, find ourselves in Charlottesville. So it's kind of the quick synopsis for you guys.
That's pretty
Cries.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's so sick.
Coach Kirwan, Mikey's a big fan of the young bloods in our sport, so I think he's fired up to have a round table of young bloods that were rising quick.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I love Metzi. We had a great conversation, but like, let's get the new, like John's saying, the new bloods. Like, let's get them rolling. A lot of good coaches here.
Yeah, right. Plus, you get Coach Metzbauer talking, and all you want to do is listen. So it's not even like a conversation. You're like, no, just keep telling us more.
That's exactly it.
Being that you were studying like education, your initial thought was kind of like teacher, coach. Now that you're a college coach, you kind of look at the field as like an outdoor classroom for you. Do you approach it maybe a little bit differently than maybe some of the people that you've met through your networking experiences? And I know some college coaches, maybe that wasn't the initial thought for them. They were just like, hey, I want to coach college. That's it. Nothing beneath it. I'm just kind of curious how you approach, your job.
Yeah, it's it's always been, to me, the teaching part was like, that's all, like I said, that's all I knew. So all the coaches that I had were all teachers. So it was like more of like, okay, if I want to coach, this is how I'm going to get there. But yeah, it's something that honestly, I feel like has more, I feel like I've become more of a teacher more recently. When you're a young guy, it's all about like the X's and O's and the perfect schemes and all of that. And then each year you kind of learn that, it's probably better just to be simple and do something that someone else has done before and try to put a little twist on it. And, and just make sure you're teaching it the right way. So I feel like that's kind of evolved for me. I know we're going to get into that a little bit later, but just, over the 8 years now coaching.
Sean, that's cool. I mean, the teaching part of it is beautiful. I think a lot of people, when they ask us like what we do for a living, it's like we are educators. Right. It's just our classroom, our subject is just lacrosse. We all do it in different ways, and it's really a unique way to look at it. It's really cool.
I think too, Sean, you hit it on the head. I think we all have similar, Mike, we graduated the same year. Corey graduated the same year. I think you're a year behind us. That learning curve as a coach, understanding that like you want to be this tactician and the best X's and O's coach in America. And as you go, you realize like, well, the old stuff worked too. Like I don't need to reinvent the sport. These things have worked for a reason. There are guys that are legends in our sport that have done the same things for a long time. Like I don't need to prove to everyone I'm the smartest guy in the room. I just need to convey the information the best way possible.
Yeah, and I actually, I just read a quote that I loved. It was something along the lines of like, I'm sure I'll butcher it, but it's like, new ideas don't consistently work. It's old ideas seen in new ways that are things that work. So it's just kind of.
Good coaches steal from better coaches.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Might have to do a new segment, Corey. Wisdom with Coach Kirwan.
I like it.
I like it.
That's nice. That's how this all started, Sean. See, we did one episode, and then it was like, all right, we'll see you next week, guys. So it looks like we just roped you in for a
there you go.
Contract here.
Coach Kirwan, if it makes you feel better, if you watch the Coach Metzbauer episode, that would make our second recurring segment. The first being words of endearment for Coach Filippo with Coach Metzbauer.
I love it. Yeah, we'll do like a steals and deals segment. I'll come in with a new idea that everyone should take from somebody else.
Sold. Done. What's the contract? Let's get it going.
If you guys think Coach Kirwan's going to be the next Metzbauer and that you just lose track of how many Final Fours you're going to be in. Because when we were talking to him, that was something that like astounded us. We were like, wait a minute. We were like, he was like counting how many like championships he won and Final Fours, and he just like lost track of it. So I hope you're there one day. I hope you keep.
I hope so too. That'd be sweet to be there. Yeah. Love to be there.
What about me and John, Corey? What we're just gonna be
I knew you'd get offended.
Counting how many episodes we've done, or like what? Like, geez, classic. Well, let's roll into this drill, Corey.
Let's get into it.
Mystery drill.
All right, so this drill is called the Manning drill, after the better Manning quarterback, of course, Eli Manning.
I knew he was going there.
Yep. So it may need to change. I go back and forth. So this drill is something that I ran in college, and then obviously coached through it at Tufts, and then brought it, at Brown and to Virginia. When I was in college, it was called the Brady drill. So obviously you can see why I changed it. Being a New York sports fan, huge Giants fan, there's no way I was going to call it a drill a Brady drill. Became the Manning drill. It's up for debate if we're going to turn it into the Jones drill. I'm kind of in wait and see mode, see how Danny Dimes' second year is.
You're not on the Dan wagon just yet?
Yeah, what's nice about the Manning drill, it's kind of immortal. He's retired now. He's always been a Giant. So 5-on-4 half field drill. And what's great about it is it really allows us to rep our transition game in a small sample. So you get, a lot of reps on the certain aspects of our transition game. And it's great. It's a 5-on-4 drill, so there's always reads. You don't need somebody to win a matchup through it. And it just allows our guys to create this muscle memory with our communication, our hand signals, and just our concepts within our transition. All right. So it's like I said, it's a half field 5-on-4 drill. So the way it's set up, you can do this 2 ends. You can do it. We do it 1 end at Virginia. So you have the white team, in this case, in 4 lines behind the cage. And, just spread out. The widest 2 lines are just inside the wing lines, the box lines. And then you have 2 right on either side of the crease. And then the blue team, you have your attackmen are going to be positioned in the alleys. So if you have 4 attackmen in there, you're going to have 2 on one side, 2 in the other. Obviously, you can go by hands. If you only have 1 lefty, you just keep the lefty on the lefty island. Let the other 3 kind of bounce back and forth. And then everybody else is in 2 lines inside the draw circle. Starts with a series of overpasses. So a ball starts in the middle, one of the 2 middle lines. He throws it to – no one's making an adjacent pass. So he throws it over his teammate's head to the outside. That guy throws it all the way over. And then he throws it to the other middle guy that hasn't touched the ball yet. While they're doing that, they're moving up the field, and they all have to touch the restraining line before they go back into the hole. So it warms up the sticks. It gives the defense a chance to work those overpasses. We're sticklers with this, so if that group drops the ball, I'll blow the whistle and a new group comes up. It's just a little bit of attention to detail there. And then they roll the ball out to one of the 2 lines, and this is where our reads come in. So as soon as they pick a side where they roll the ball to, that dictates what attackmen go in. So if you're ball side, you send 1 attackman in, and if you're on the opposite ball side, you send 2 in. So it's constantly creating that L shape.
Sure.
And then from there, we, again, if you watch some of our games, we obviously are pretty pick heavy in our transition game, a lot of pass down, pick downs. So, you're watching this kind of unfold as we go, and you're just playing out that 5-on-4 to a shot or a lull, and then the next group goes. So today, this drill, what's nice about it, you can kind of dictate, some little things if you're trying to work on certain things. So it was important for us on this day that we were telling our guys to fight through all picks on defense, because what we wanted to work on was that pick and re-pick action.
Right.
Today. So again, we're setting it up. So you're going to see in this drill in particular on this day, some of these guys are hanging on to the ball probably a little bit more than they normally would in a 5-on-4. And that's because we wanted to enforce and incorporate that pick and re-pick action with what we were doing. So the next group goes up, get a series of overpasses. Again, I must have been nice that day, or must not have seen it because that's a drop. So we normally would reset that.
Coach, can I ask an offensive principle question, especially for you got some high school coaches that follow our show here, and maybe some club coaches and stuff that work with kids who are just learning the concept of maybe setting a pick in transition. Why do you do it, and why do you feel as though that allows you to kind of create offense in these types of settings?
So like all things with pick play, obviously, doing it can help you win some matchups. It can create some confusion from a defensive side of the ball. And so for us, it's pick communication is such an important part of our defense, to think about, other teams having to communicate through picks with a tired offensive midi trying to do that. I mean, he's thinking about getting off the field. The last thing he wants to do is try to talk through a pick with a defenseman. And so we feel like we can gain some advantages there. Again, we only need the defense to make 1 mistake for us to get a good opportunity. And, if that's through that communication, we want to try to take advantage of it. And then, the space aspect of it, when you're in transition, odds are it's odd number situation or lesser numbers, like a 5-on-5 or 4-on-4. So you have a little bit more space to operate. And it's something that, keeps defenses on their heels constantly. If they're not worried about this, they can relax and get organized where, hopefully we're putting a lot of pressure on them at all times, this included.
Sean, you can let it run, but one thing I noticed that I really liked is that other midi that's coming down without the ball. It looks like he's kind of crashing down the back pipe. Mike and I did an episode with Coach Dinolfo up at Tufts, so I know obviously there's some similar ideas there. But what I love is there's probably a million coaches in the country that are saying, don't cut, keep the space, keep it a 5-on-4. Could you explain a little bit of what the thought process that is there with that guy crashing down the backside?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what that cut can do. right? And even if it's not somebody
That
you're
right there.
necessarily looking to
Yeah,
Can you back up that
pass
how
to.
you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you
Sorry,
run that back?
Sean. That's just
Literally
like a
it right
load of.
there.
Yeah, this cut is sick. Sorry, Sean. Keep talking about it
Yeah.
because it's perfect.
Right. And again, you can just see on this one is a great example of how that cut can sink in. And, when we're telling our offensive guys too, we want our attackmen to have the ball. So, that's what they're paid to do, right? They're not paid. I'm going to go on record there. But
No, they are a scholarship. You can.
yeah, right. All
No,
right.
that's
Yeah, you know what I mean.
yeah.
Yeah. But
Give the people what they want.
exactly. So to us, it's like, all right, so why are we going to ask a D mid that just played a ton of defense to stand on the perimeter and look to get the ball when in reality we can make his job a lot easier. Hey, cut the crease. If you're open, we're going to give it to you. You gotta dunk it as opposed to hitting a step down. And then it opens up these lanes for our attack to essentially pass the ball to each other and look for each other across the field.
So your O middies are in white.
We have attackmen. That's Ian Laviano right in front of you here.
Wow.
So he's playing defense too. It's one of those things. We want all of our guys to do it.
So this is a team drill.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. And so then we have all of our O middies, all of our D personnel. They get to be in those two lines up top, and again working with those attackmen. So trying to simulate that defense to offense. And about halfway through the drill, we'll run this drill for about 10 minutes. So at the 5-minute mark, we'll switch, put the blue team behind the cage, let the white team come up.
I love it.
So again, we probably are hanging on to that ball a little bit too long in this one, but again, we wanted to really work on that pick and repick action.
You didn't want to work on the cut in your offhand, backhand, flip finish?
Yeah, well, those are the nice silver linings of this drill. We get to work on those skills as well.
I just love the willingness there. Like they're feeding that pole on the pipe. That's great.
Yeah, and it's we are definitely overzealous to feed those guys. Sometimes we gotta make sure we're looking for our attackman teammates as well. But it's great. We've had plenty of games where those are huge goals, huge momentum, juice goals. You get a D mid scoring in any sense, in transition, that's going to get everybody on the field pretty excited. So it's definitely an awesome part to doing this.
I love how he just jumped it. The white guy just jumped it.
Yeah, and we'll give our guys all that freedom. Like I said, we'll dictate a little bit on if we want to see, certain things. Our guys are smart kids and they understand how drills work and how to be successful in them. So if we don't give them any direction, our defense will get into a box. They'll be super organized. They'll pass off all picks, and so we feel like to get that actual realistic look where a close defenseman doesn't want to switch with an offensive midi, we'll tell them, hey, we're going to fight through all picks today, or, we're going to work this action. We're going to do all up picks for the dodging midi coming in transition, things like that you can, tweak and tailor to what you want to work on.
I love it. Great drill, Coach. Really cool.
Yeah, this is cool.
And so how often are you guys doing that drill, Coach?
We do that drill probably like once every 2 weeks. It's not something we do every week, but it's definitely we do transition drill. We do a transition drill probably every day. If not, we'll do it for 5 out of the 6 days of the week. We'll do a transition drill, and we have a bunch, so that's just one of them. It's a good one to have like end of the week when you're not really trying to gas anybody. That's like a pretty popular Thursday drill for us.
Nice.
I like it. I'm going to put that up there with one of my favorite drills we've watched, and that's not just because you're on the call here, Coach Kirwan.
You're lying to him.
Yeah, I don't know. Just you don't need to butter me up here. I'm already on the call. I said I'm in for the next segment too. I'm in for steals
Sure,
and deals.
steals and deals. You're right.
So, yeah.
Steals and deals.
You make the sell stop selling.
All right, so let's enter the film room a little bit. We're gonna be watching UVA versus Brown. This was, I believe, both you and Coach Tiffany first trip up there after you guys went from Brown to.
Yeah, so we played them the year before in an overtime game at Virginia, and then we went back this past year.
Yeah, what was that like heading up there?
It was weird for sure. I love Providence. Is just an awesome place. I enjoyed my time so much there. Those, I guess 3 years that I was there. two seasons. But like I met my wife there and, spent a ton of time there. We love going back. So to be there was awesome. And, we actually got to see a bunch of alums that we coached. And so it was this weird feeling of, obviously knowing we're on a business trip and trying to come out for a win, but then also some nostalgia, setting in place. So best way to describe it is definitely a weird feeling.
Sure.
So it must be, not only having your alums there and nostalgia getting back, but you got your guy who got you into the business, Coach Dale's on the other sideline. And Coach Metzi puts it well. He hates Coach T for 2 hours, during the game. And what's your feeling when you're going against, your former head coach? Oh,
yeah, it's yeah, I know. Actually, if you watch this, he doesn't know how he missed it. You can watch McCaleb celebrates after he shoots this. Still don't know. It's like we watched it a couple times. We're like, we don't know how that didn't go in. But yeah, no, it's a definitely again, the theme is just like a weird feeling. I don't necessarily have a ton of hate, I guess you could say, when I'm playing against people. I'm a pretty competitive person, but at the same time, it's not something that this is a ridiculous save by Goss.
Oh my God.
10-man. Yeah. This game is wild.
That was an on-point.
What a save.
Yeah. This is just how the game started. Yeah. So it's but yeah, obviously too with Coach Holm there, I know those guys very well and know that staff and the program that they're trying to build and what Brown is too. So, you have this kind of all week kind of knowing at least a little bit what their message and their mindset's going to be, having kind of been in that room before. And then also knowing that, we were still an unfinished product. We were making strides as a team, but not necessarily where we knew we could be. And definitely not where people were expecting us, having come off the year we just had. Definitely had some expectations there. But, so it's just this kind of weird feeling of, knowing that we had to be ready for a battle. You just knew this game was going to be a 1-goal game. Just with everything around it.
Huh. So this is legal?
So again, that'll be the part that, I don't think that's going to be allowed.
Right.
But,
he one-hand punched and spun on his hand while Lasala's top hand was dragged to the ground. Oh, here it is.
Yep.
Here's the drill.
Yep, and so we got a little flat break action going. I love just a good, I call it a flat break. I guess I have to be corrected. I guess the V break, people will call it. This to me is how I was taught what a flat break is. But I love it. I spent a lot of time actually, John, with your boss, Coach Kelleher, is a huge flat break advocate. I love it. Because you don't have to hit it to the guy that slides. That's to me is the best part about it, is that they slide off the right point, but they slide off the right point, and for us, all we have to do is hit a point man. They're coming off the Matt Moore in this case, but we know if we can't make that pass, just throw it to Mike Krause and he can make that read. It's a really hard recovery for the defense. And again, no one practices these types of rotations. Everyone practices coming off the point man, sliding off it, and rotating around that, whereas you throw it against the grain. You essentially get an even more open look through it.
The skip is so dangerous there. We practice obviously against it every day, and our guys, their heads explode on the skip because they're taking a rotation and throwing opposite of it, and it makes it really hard to defend.
I actually, felt like we played pretty good defense to start this game. We were a young defense. We had 2 first years out there for us, so every day was a journey and a little bit more improvement by them. So. Like I said, we were far from a finished product. This game, actually, even in a loss, there were some things both offensively and defensively that we were seeing that made us pretty confident that we were going to be able to turn things around. We felt pretty quickly. So,
Coach K, who were some of the guys on Brown in terms of personnel that scared you, being that you coached them and they were kind of rising in their personal careers and doing a really good job?
Yeah. So our we actually didn't coach any of the guys on the roster at that point. We had recruited the entire senior class was a group that we had recruited because they were obviously seniors headed into being freshmen in college by the time we left. So, we knew all of them. Obviously, Phil Goss is a tremendous goalie. He's from our offensive standpoint, Virginia offense. He was, the guy that we knew was going to give us the most trouble. He's just a really fantastic goalie. Takes up a ton of net. Is really quick with his hands and does a little bit of guessing, but at the same time can get away with it because he's so big and rangy and got long arms to. Those are, turnovers that we're going to live with how we play. And I think a lot of coaches will be fine with that turnover. But one of the best things about what we do is we can be aggressive knowing that, if we lose the ball, odds are we're going to have a really good chance to ride it back. And we spend a ton of time practicing our ride. It's such a valuable piece of our puzzle and our identity.
Yeah, I think that doesn't get talked about enough is how hard you guys ride. It's awesome.
Oh, speaking of the man, Goss, here it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, sick.
Great save.
How you doing?
But, and I think, too, like, part of it is our personnel and our attackmen riding and, how athletic and tenacious they are. But we spend a lot of time with our schemes with it. Like, that's, it sounds cliche, but you got to practice it. I mean, it's.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. No, that's the freshman right there, right? Cormier?
Yeah.
24,
yeah.
kind of
So
creative.
he's, kind of just a bull in the china shop right now. He's just kind of a guy that goes, and it's how he plays box too. There's not a lot of flash to it. He's way more. He reminds me a lot more of like when Ohio State made the finals, and it had the Pearson and Fennell kind of. Those two guys were a lot more like meat and potatoes than like a Chris Cloutier, who's got a lot more flash to his game. So Payton's more of that type of mold of just he's going to get to his spots and he's deceptively athletic and. But it's definitely he's been a fun piece addition to what we can do offensively.
So what do we have here, Coach? Kind of talk us through.
Yeah, so this is actually we have a D midi. He's coming to set a pick on ball. So he's actually a converted O midi. This guy Jack Peel, who's a walk on for us, and then is starting to gain a lot of playing time. Played a little bit for us last year. And we switched him to D midi this year just because of, just a little bit of a logjam on offense. And the best part about it is that he knows our entire offense. So we can trap offensive middies and make them play and know that we don't need to sacrifice anything that we're doing, from an offensive standpoint because Jack knows it all. So that, it's as simple as it sounds, just a little two-man game on the wing and, just trying to, create some good spontaneous off-ball movement. We got guys working together to do it.
And that, like you talked about before, Sean, too, you had the turnover before with your pole playing offense, but that's the trade-off, right? You'll take that turnover because later on you create a goal out of it with another defensive guy in the field.
Right. Exactly. And again, if we practice it enough, which, obviously we have drills like the Manning drill where everyone is playing offense and defense, there's a lot of trust that we have in our D personnel. Especially some of our older guys that have been now doing it for 4 years, like Jared Connors is as good as some of our offensive middies, when it comes to cutting and moving in space. So again, a lot of, pick focus. We actually miss an opportunity to throw this thing forward, but, like a lot of teams do up top, we'll have a lot of this weave action, kind of create some space. This is something that we spend a ton of time with and we still, struggle with is hitting those drifts and those one mores right to your face. Sometimes they're so obviously in plain sight that you miss them. And then for the most part, our offense flows into some version of our big little behind the cage, where we're sending cuts on the inside. It has the shape of a 2-2-2. I don't love labeling. I don't know how you guys feel. I don't love labeling offenses by formations because I feel like you can pause any formation and call it whatever you want. So,
Agreed.
I use it. I call it a 2-2-2 just because it helps other people out. But to me, it's, it's just our big little.
So talk about how you teach it. I mean, are they working in pairs of two? Is it, like we run a 4-2 and I call it a 4-2 because 4 guys are working together and 2 guys are working together. I mean, how are you? Teaching this?
Our above the cage offense and our behind the cage offense, I guess, are a little different. I mean, at the end of the day, they're all kind of similar. pairs-ish. You got guys working in two. When the ball's above the cage, we actually give Ian Laviano a decent amount of freedom to kind of do whatever he wants off ball and in the crease. So, when the ball's above, we got a two-man game on ball, a two-man game off ball, a guy at X, and then Ian kind of doing what he wants to do. And our big little, it's the two guys working inside. The only thing we ask is that they have a high-low concept. One guy cutting down low, usually to the back pipe, and the other guy finds that soft spot that's left in the wake of those cuts. And we can do it out of different formations and make some adjustments there. And then our top two guys, we call them posts. Their job is to be outlets, but then also drift and move into space.
And here's your high-low.
Yep, there's a high-low. We drill this a ton, this look in particular. It's I actually went back and forth between the Manning drill and then a drill of how we rep that. But it's, just a lot of repetition there and a lot of confidence to look for those soft spots and have that feel. We obviously get this one deflected. As you can see with Ian, when he catches it, you rewind it, he kind of double clutches when he catches it. I feel like that gives the defense an opportunity to get their stick in there and go fishing.
It looks like he's trying to come upfield, but here it is, you guys hitting that drift like you talked about.
Yeah.
So dangerous.
And like you go back back and forth with this kind of that eye in the sky, and you're like, man, it'd be nice to throw it right back against the grain as the defense collapsed. But, that's a first year. There's 5 seconds left on the clock. He's coming up the field. There's not much more we can ask him to do in those scenarios. Maybe change planes. That would probably be about it.
And then as you probably know this other sideline pretty well, I mean, are they looking to get into a similar transition package like you guys are? And whether
they I'd say you watch a Brown game, they do a lot more dodging with their D mids. They're clearing out size, letting those guys get some full heads of steam coming down. But the thing that they're the best at, they're just super opportunistic, and Coach Daly does a great job of creating chaos in practice and getting their guys comfortable with, again, we used to laugh in college. He used to always say our best man up play would be a ground ball to the midline. And part of it's, like a little bit of a knock on, how our man up wasn't great, I guess. But also it was just like we do so well with chaos. And then you throw in chaos with the defense having one less guy, and it's just like things that you don't practice that we were great at. And you can see that kind of in these Brown teams too, just super opportunistic, and they're creating a lot of their own luck just by being prepared for a lot of things most teams aren't.
Sean,
so go ahead.
I was just going to say, going back to your point about Laviano, we played against VMI this year, which has one of your disciples, Mikey Herring, running their offense. And I think what that guy floating makes your life as a defense a little bit harder, right? It makes it a little bit more unpredictable. It's not like he's going to anchor himself to the crease. He might drift to the wing. He might float high. He might pop behind. I think that makes the offense in general just much harder to defend.
Yeah, and it's actually something that we've been having these offensive meetings once a week now. And one of the things that we're talking as an offense is we're like just this cool discussion of kind of deconstructing and reconstructing our tenets and our core principles. And one of the things we talked about is like, yeah, you can be predictable and super structured, but your room for error and the level of execution you need to be great when you're so structured is through the roof. It's almost unfair because there's such good defensive coordinators that the more structured you are, the more structure they're going to find, and it's easier to defend in some ways. Whereas the more creative and opportunistic you can be and constantly changing, even one guy, right? And even with Ian, it just gives that little bit more room for error on the execution front.
Hey, Sean, how did you know to find that balance between like structure and freedom? I feel like that's such a fine line. It's also tough as your personnel changes, guys graduate. Like, how do you try to like figure that out as a coach?
Well, that's the thing too, is that like you can have all your guys back, and what you did the year before, it just for whatever reason that group, it just doesn't mesh. So you got to constantly reevaluate what you have and what your guys need. Like our 2019 team, that was probably some of the most structured offense that I've ever coached. I haven't been coaching for that long, but definitely more structured than anything we did at Tufts or Brown, and even our first couple of years at Virginia. But that's what our team needed. We had a defense that was still growing and learning. So part of it was to protect our D. And then also it's just that our team and our offensive guys, they understood a certain couple of sets and could execute that at a high level. So that's a team that did better with structure. And then this year we had a group that wanted a little bit more freedom, and we were kind of in this like purgatory. And you can see as a result, we were 4-2, not necessarily playing our best lacrosse, but we were trending in the right direction. So hopefully that we can use that. And this year, I think this is a group that can handle a lot of freedom. Like I said, just doing these exercises with them, hopefully it'll create a pretty fun product for us when we get back on the field.
Sure.
Got a little zone here, it looks like.
Yeah, so we knew they were going to run zone. They pretty much Brown threw 60 minutes of zone at us the year before. So it's one of those things. Early in the season too, Lehigh threw it out, and Lehigh's got a fantastic zone. Gave us some trouble, so I think teams kind of saw that and started to use it a little bit. But we simplified. I mean, as you can see in this whole possession, this is our big little offense. It's the exact same thing. We just
Yep. I like the zone buster here inside.
Yeah. He actually breaks the kid's shaft too while in the process, which was pretty sweet. And that's something that Matt's not great at, those inside rolls, but it's cool when, as a coach, Matt and I were out 2-3 days that week just working on his inside roll, and to see that kind of go into a game and him use it and have success doing it is really, I mean, as you guys know, there's fewer better feelings as a coach than teaching one of your players something and then having them do it and have success doing it.
No question.
I love your man offense is your zone offense. We run the same stuff just to keep it simple. And I think a lot of, high school guys or other coaches out there are creating a zone offense, based on what the zones are. And I love the way you kind of attack that corner. We've got to see you guys score against Coach Madelon in Princeton in a game we broke down with Coach Mads, and you could see your man concepts just melt right into your zone, and it's perfect. Easier for the kids too.
Well, and I'm sure you guys know too, like one of the hardest things with beating a zone is getting your guys to get over the fact that it's just a defense, right? It's like that mental part of it is more crippling than anything else. And so if you're creating an entire new offense for zone, you're telling them essentially like, hey, what we do is not going to work. And that's not helping the mentality that you have. We miss one here too. Again, flat break, he should be throwing this thing to the opposite wing.
Oh,
you can
Brown,
walk in there
totally differently this time.
Yep. And again, all you gotta do is hit a point man. If that's the easiest one to hit, do it. And then, like I said, that's someone we have a lot of faith in shooting that ball, but love to see him skip that thing wing to wing.
Well, it's kind of funny, Sean, when we practice against a flat break, obviously we've seen it a lot, and Coach Keller will be like, hey, can you just tell those guys to mix up where they rotate from, because our opponents will mess this up a lot more than we are in practice.
Right. Yeah.
Classic head coach. Do you run into that? I know Lars, coaches your defense over there, Coach Tiffany. And do you guys run into that like, the head coach is a D guy? We run into these conversations,
It's
we
something
do it all the
that
time for you.
Yeah, it's something that it's amazing how much better you can get at. Like, when I first started working for him, that's something that would drive me crazy. But then you kind of just like find these silver linings with it and be like, all right, well, we're practicing something that we'd never use, but we're pretty good at it, so maybe we should use it. And
Right.
again, going back to the whole stealing mindset, it's like, it's helpful when you're sometimes prepping for teams that are doing something a little different.
It's pretty cool to see how similar these styles are, by the way. Like, both teams are riding their asses off. Both teams play absolute chaos. It's like looking in the mirror right now.
It was definitely a wild experience. And I think we were up 9-4 at halftime. And to me, I was like, this does not feel good. So this is right at the end of the quarter. Again, trying to jam to a pole and end the quarter. We'll take that. We'll encourage that.
Let's do our outside line segment. So, Coach K, let's talk a little bit about the evolution of you personally as a offensive coordinator. Going from your first stop to your second to now what you're doing at UVA. Your style is definitely. We talked about it being entertaining. Obviously, it's definitely unique in certain ways. You also, like you said, you are very well connected to the we'll call it like the greats that have come before us, which is cool. So you kind of a unique spin on it as well as it relates to that. So just kind of take us through it, and maybe also talk about like why maybe things change from one stop to another, or while you were at a specific school, because it's always interesting to hear that as well.
Yeah, so it comes with a lot of evaluation, right? And so when I took the job after graduating 2012 and into 2013, my first step was, all right, what did we do that was successful? What did I do personally? And when I was young, it was more thinking of like, all right, what did I do that I thought was great that I was just doing because I was allowed to? And how do I teach that to, in that case, it was Chris Shonut, who was like the next crease attackman at Tough. So started there, and it was like, all right, well, there has to be some structure because it's hard for me to just be like, hey, just go and feel this out. And so that's where that started to come into play. And then it was just a matter of taking things that we've done in the past and then kind of cross-referencing it with who you had coming back and what you wanted to improve on. And so just with kind of that simple formula, I can tell you that the offense that I've run every year, every place that I've been, from Tufts through Virginia, every year our offense is different. Now, some years it's a lot more different. Other years there's just some minor tweaks, but you can't go year to year in any season that I've coached and say this is the exact same offense they ran the year before. So part of that is tough because you got to make sure that these guys are grasping it. And you're installing a lot of new things, and so it's constantly learning, but hopefully I'm doing my job the right way, and that these changes that I'm making are only to allow players to play more of their strengths, and so I've never been a big believer in having my own system and recruiting to it and trying to fit guys into certain roles and pigeonhole them into certain things. I'd rather say, all right, give me the guys I'm working with. Let me see what they're great at, and let me try to help them, reach their max potential as we are trying to do it as a team. And so, at my first year at Tufts, we were running a lot of the same things that we did, a lot of the same concepts that we did when I was a player. But it was a lot of single invert. It was a lot of just like downhill midi dodging. And then the next year we had, a guy named John Upgren, who's going to, and arguably one of the best Division III players of all time, was a sophomore. And, we started changing some things because he was great in the two-man game, and he had really good chemistry with another guy we had, Cole Bailey. So that kind of spearheaded now a huge big little influence for us. And, that's something that has, for the most part stayed, and just what's happening behind it has changed. And then from there, I went from Tufts to Brown. And what that did was it forced me to put labels on things that, I don't know if this makes sense, that I kind of took for granted, that were so embedded in the Tufts style and the Tufts culture that, I couldn't just say to Lars, hey, we're doing this because this is how we do it. It needed explanation. It needed some structure. It needed labels. And so it forced me to really reevaluate everything and leave some things behind, and obviously take a lot with me. And it gave me a free opportunity to make some changes too that maybe I was holding off on because things were so well run and so embedded in the tough style. That's like, why change things? Because they're clearly not broken here. So, when I went to Brown, we spent a ton of time working on our transition game because that was what was new. I mean, this was a team that was averaging, they were winning games 8-7. It was a team that was built around a stingy defense and had a super patient offense that, was built to complement that defense. And so in come, myself, 24 years old, and convincing Lars to make this jump. And so we had to spend a lot of time practicing it, both offensively and defensively. So it left some room for growth for sure in our settled offense. Mm-hmm. If you watch towards the end of that 2015 year, we started to struggle and lose some games because teams just found ways to force us to play 6v6. And we just weren't that we didn't have much depth in our 6v6 offense. It was a lot of get Dylan the ball and hopefully guys are in the right spot. Mm-hmm. And then also Dylan didn't have a lot of depth as a player then. He was very much a give me the ball and get out of my way. I'm going to spash my way through three guys. So then that summer, we had a great year. We made it into the playoffs and played Denver. But, that summer I knew that in order to change, we got to get better at our 6v6 offense. And so we ended up that year in 2016, we ran very similar to what you were saying, Slip, of like a 4-2 concept, 4 guys working up top. And then, we had 2 guys, a midi and Dylan behind the cage constantly. And so we're able to create something there, and it fit with our guys. We had 2 really good off-ball shooters and 2 just classic middies that were pretty good dodgers that can draw slides with short sticks. And so then you go to Brown to Virginia, and here we are with, just a whole new group of guys. And so we're laying a groundwork. And again, that was something that we spent a lot of time on our transition that year, and maybe not as much time on our settled offense and defense, knowing we needed to lay a groundwork there. And as much as there was pressure to win now because we had a great senior class and we were talented, we knew that we needed to be diligent with what we were putting in and where we were spending our time for the future. So that year, actually, I guess if you were to say what's been the closest years, probably the Brown 2016 to Virginia 2017 offenses were probably the most similar. We had Zeddy Williams, so we were running a little bit more, true pairs and trying to make him as comfortable as possible. But, from there, the next year, we graduated a bunch of attackmen, brought in a bunch of downhill dodging middies, and we kind of tried to give them space. And we run a pretty simple 1-3-2, just kind of triangle offense to give these middies, room to dodge. And it worked. We had a great year that year. We snapped some streaks and made it back to the playoffs. But again, it was just like the next year we just felt, this idea of moving Matt to attack. We had this kid Cormier coming in who we knew was going to be great. So we started tweaking some things. Plus the shot clock kind of threw a wrench in everything, how you evaluated what you were running. And so that led us to, running a little bit more of a structured offense the next year. It's something that our guys really wanted, whether they were willing to admit it or not. That's how we were going to be successful. It's how we were going to be able to allow our defense to grow and not leave them out on an island, which playing fast and reckless can do for sure very quickly. And, by the time our defense figured it out and started on a stride, we were really rolling. I mean, outside of a Duke regular season loss where, Krause was injured and we ended up losing by 5, but we didn't lose a game other than that, through all of March, April, and May. So it was just as the defense kind of caught up, our offense really started to click and execute. And so that even on off days, our defense started to bail us out a little bit more, and we were able to get more opportunities as teams kind of figured out our structure. So we had that room for error in our execution because we were getting some support on the defensive end towards the end of that year. And then, this past year, like I said, Cormier got hurt. So that kind of tweaked a little bit of what we were doing, but knowing he was coming back and going to run some midfield for us and what he could do with Krause on a lefty wing, started bringing the ball up top a little bit more than we did the year before. We also knew that we had an experienced group, but teams were going to know that, hey, you got to cover this big little, you got to cover these guys on the inside. This is the cuts they're going to do. They do it all the time. So we're just finding different ways to get to those spots and different ways to disguise it. And, hopefully keep the defense guessing with what we were trying to do there. So that's where that evolution of this year, where we were headed.
Yeah. One thing I find so interesting just about your approach, which I think as a college coach, you almost have you have almost like freedom because you can like recruit players. As a high school coach, you don't. It's like these are your kids, right? Especially a public school coach, more than anything. It's like these are your kids, work with what you got. And, I think the great coaches at the high school level, they can get creative. They can work with what they got. They can mold kids and unfold them into becoming players that maybe they didn't even think they could become. So I find it so interesting. You kind of have a similar approach, even at the college level, and it's obviously worked for you. And not to mention, you still have the ability to recruit maybe kids that kind of fit what you're trying to do at the same time too.
Yeah, and I think inevitably there's some hope that guys can fill roles. I think we all do it. When you recruit somebody, you always compare them to someone who it reminds you of. But at the end of the day, you don't know what you're going to get until they show up and they start playing. And so, to me, it's not worth. It's almost a wasted exercise trying to imagine where a guy's going to fit. When at the end of the day, I guess Connor Schellenberger is a great example. He's somebody that came in and ended up choosing the red shirt because he felt like he needed more time to see where he fits. And so you just never know when these guys come in of, who's going to hit the ground running, like an Ian Laviano who started every game since he stepped on, and who's going to come in a little bit slower. Doc Aiken started off slow, Matt Moore, and then Schellenberg is the next example of just guys that just took a little bit extra to figure it out. And then at the end of the day, it's, they figured it out on their own pace, and they're all tremendous players that we're, really fortunate to have. It's so interesting to see guys go through different, areas of growth with their development once they get on campus and on grounds here.
Yeah, and then for you, Jay, I can only imagine as a D coordinator, it's probably so much harder to defend, when a coach runs their offense like this, right?
100%. I mean, I was going to say one thing that I think flies under the radar, Sean, is how much of it's such a team-wide commitment to playing an up-tempo style, right? As much as people want to focus on this as an offensive style, we're going to play fast. Your defense and your goalie and your face-off guy and your attackman, there's team-wide accountability to, well, we might take a risk, but we're going to ride the ball back. Or defensively, we know they're taking risks, so we got to be okay digging in, even if we've played a lot of defense for stretches. Mm-hmm. I think that flies totally under the radar. People view it as just an offensive thing, and not just from a defensive scope. It is such a team-wide commitment to a style of play.
Yeah, and it's so interesting when you hear football coaches talk about it all the time. We're talking about the sport that has the biggest split between sides of the ball, right? There's no interaction, and even you hear them talk about complementary football, right? So if these coaches are spending so much time talking about complementary football, how are you not thinking about that as a lacrosse coach? There's so much blending that goes in. Your offense and your style has to complement what you're doing on the defensive end. And as soon as those things aren't aligned, doesn't matter if you're playing slow or fast. If they're not aligned, that's where you're going to have some hiccups and some issues.
Listen, Coach K, we really appreciate your time, man. This was awesome. I mean, sometimes I'm sure when you just kind of talk about what you do and, just what you do day to day and how you approach things, you don't realize how much you're also educating. I think people that just are into the game too, do what you do, or just are passionate about coaching. We like to talk about the overexcited Lax dad who tunes in sometimes to the show too, and likes to learn from us. So we really appreciate your time and everything you kind of brought to today's episode.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. This was a ton of fun. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much.
Perfect.
All right.
Awesome.
Seals and deals. We're gonna hold you to that.
I'm in. Yeah, just let me know.
There you go.